The ancient city is excited as preparations for the long-awaited Third Temple reach a fever pitch. Every detail signals a momentous event on the horizon, from the intricate garments of the high priest to the sacred artifacts meticulously arranged. But amidst the fervor, a formidable obstacle emerges. Despite the fervent hopes of many, opposition to the temple's construction intensifies, mainly due to religious sensitivities surrounding the proposed site. The Temple Mount, revered by Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, becomes the focal point of contention, with the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque standing as formidable barriers. So let's dive into this video today to uncover the unexpected twists and turns in Israel's bold decision amidst the ongoing construction of the Third Temple. The big question right now is whether the temple will actually be built, as mentioned in biblical prophecy. Some are wondering if instead of focusing on a physical building, Jews should focus on building a spiritual temple, as described in their scriptures. Significance of the temple. For many years, both Jews and Christians have been waiting for the Third Temple to be rebuilt. This is because it's seen as a sign that the prophecy about the Messiah's return is coming true. However, there are some challenges and doubts about whether this rebuilding will happen. Isaiah 8:18 says, "Here am I and the children the Lord has given me. We are signs and symbols in Israel from the Lord Almighty who dwells on Mount Zion." You might ask yourself, if the sanctuary was a copy and a shadow of what is in heaven, Hebrews 8:5, and Yeshua, Jesus, serves in the sanctuary, the true tabernacle set up by the Lord, Hebrews 8:2, why contemplate building the Holy Temple? The Holy Temple in Jerusalem was never simply a building or structure, but an earthly dwelling place for the divine presence of God. The Lord said, "Let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell shocking among them." Exodus 25:8. See also Exodus 40:34-35 and 1 Kings 8:11. This dwelling, shakan, forms the related word Shekinah, which is not found in the original Hebrew Bible, but it is used in rabbinic literature and Bible translations to describe the Lord's divine presence. The prophet Ezekiel witnessed the departure of this divine presence from the temple, Ezekiel 10:18-19. But he also saw the rebuilding of God's eternal and permanent dwelling place on the Temple Mount in the holy city of Jerusalem. The glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east. I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. He said, "Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever." Ezekiel 43:4-7. Rambam, Rabbi Moses Maimonides, a medieval Jewish philosopher and Torah scholar, said that the temple has eternal significance. He wrote in Hilchos Bais Habachira, the laws of God's chosen house, that the temple had two primary purposes: to reveal to mankind the divine presence of God, which dwelt above the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. Above the cover between the two cherubim that are over the Ark of the Testimony, I will meet with you and give you all my commands for the Israelites to facilitate the offering of the required sacrifices. Exodus 25:22. Since the destruction of the Second Temple in AD 70, however, the Jewish people can no longer offer these sacrifices. In fact, 2022 out of the 613 mitzvot, commandments, in the Torah cannot be performed without a temple. With no temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish people now worship the God of Israel in their local community synagogues and in the study of Torah. Instead of offering animal sacrifices, they now offer tefillah, prayer, teshuvah, repentance, and tzedakah, charity. Many think that animal sacrifices have been done away with forever, but according to Bible prophecy, this simply isn't so. The Lord tells the prophet Ezekiel that in a future temple, the prescribed sacrifices will be offered. The north and south rooms facing the temple courtyard are the priests' rooms, where the priests who approach the Lord will eat the most holy offerings. There they will put the holiest offerings, the grain offerings, the sin offerings, and the guilt offerings, for the place is holy, mentioned in Ezekiel 42:13. Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is a really important place in Old Jerusalem. It's important to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. It's a hill with a lot of history and religious significance. Right now, a lot of talk and work is happening around building the Third Temple, but it's not easy. Different groups are against the idea, and this opposition complicates things. Muslims call this hill the Haram al-Sharif, which means the noble sanctuary. It's very important in their religion because it's where the impressive Al-Aqsa Mosque is located. This mosque is one of Islam's 3 most holy sites. Muslims believe that the Prophet Muhammad went to heaven from this place. For Jews, the most sacred place in the world is the Temple Mount, or as they call it, the Ha-Habaita. It is the heart of their spiritual life and a symbol of their connection to their history. They feel close to their roots here, and their prayers feel especially powerful. It's a spot where they celebrate their identity together. Long ago, there were 2 incredible temples on this hill. The first one was built around 957 BCE, when Solomon, King David's son, was ruling. David had wanted to build a grand temple for God, but he wasn't allowed because he had been involved in wars and fighting. Instead of allowing David to build the temple himself, God permitted him to gather the plans and materials for it, which he passed on to his son, Solomon. Solomon then carried out the construction of Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. This location was a former threshing floor purchased by David, where an angel of God had appeared to him. The temple was designed to house the ark and provide a place for worship. It consisted of 3 main parts: the porch, the holy place, and the Holy of Holies. History of the temples. The temple's courtyard, though not huge, was quite spacious. However, tragedy struck in 586 BCE when Nebuchadnezzar, the powerful king of Babylon, conquered Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and took the people captive. In 538 BCE, after a period of exile, the Jews were allowed to return, and construction on the Second Temple began under the leadership of Zerubbabel. Initially modest, this temple was later expanded and improved by Herod the Great. Herod was not satisfied with the modest appearance of the Second Temple, so he rebuilt it into a grand structure. The Second Temple under Herod's reign was much larger and more impressive, featuring extensive courtyards, gates, chambers, and public squares. It housed various facilities for religious practices, including storage for tithes, equipment, and vessels. Even important officials had private chambers within the temple. However, tragedy struck again in 70 CE when the Roman Empire destroyed the Second Temple during its siege of Jerusalem. Only a part of it, now known as the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall, remains as a reminder of its once grand existence. Interestingly, since the destruction of these temples, people have been eagerly awaiting the fulfillment of the prophecy regarding the Third Temple as described in the Holy Books. Clarifying misconceptions. Before we explore further, let's address some misconceptions. Some believe that the First and Second Temples were located within the confines of the Roman fort. However, the precise location of these temples is debated. While traditional illustrations often show the temple adjacent to the Antonia fortress north of the Temple Mount, historical records from Josephus and archaeological findings suggest a different story. Some historical perspectives suggest that after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE, the Roman military camp was set up around 3 towers near Herod's royal palace on the Western Hill. This contrasts with the idea that it centered on the southern part of the Temple Mount. The Romans tore down the defensive walls around the Temple Mount, and remnants of these walls are still visible today near the Western Wall. While it seems unlikely that the First and Second Temples were originally situated within the Antonia fortress, there is general agreement that the fortress was built specifically to protect the Second Temple and house a segment of the Roman garrison stationed in Jerusalem. This perspective helps clarify the historical context of the temples and their relation to the Roman presence in the area. What does the Bible say? Now let's explore the pressing question of when the Third Temple will be rebuilt. What does the Bible say about it? The idea of rebuilding the Third Temple is a hotly debated topic. Some argue that it will be reconstructed on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, where the previous temples once stood. This notion ties in with the concept of the abomination of desolation. However, there are differing views on its significance in fulfilling biblical prophecy and reviving Jewish worship. Some see it as aligned with God's will, while others believe it goes against his plan. In the book of Daniel, chapter 8 prophetically mentions the cessation of daily sacrifices and the desecration of the sacred sanctuary, symbolized by the temple in Jerusalem. This vision was said to have been realized in historical events. A significant narrative unfolds during the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes, a ruler who strongly opposed the daily sacrifices performed by the Jews in the temple. What adds intrigue to this story is the belief that the restoration of these daily sacrifices will play a crucial role in the future reconstruction of the temple. This highlights the temple's importance in the Jewish faith and their connection with God. Prophetic descriptions. Ezekiel's vision. In the book of Ezekiel, specifically chapters 40-48, the prophet Ezekiel describes the temple, including its layout, dimensions, chambers, gates, and courtyards. However, scholars and believers interpret Ezekiel's prophecy of the third temple differently. Some interpret Ezekiel's vision as a literal prophecy, foreseeing the construction of a physical temple in Jerusalem before the return of Christ. Others view it as figurative or symbolic, representing God's profound relationship with his people. For them, it symbolizes the restoration of Jewish worship and the nation's spiritual revival. For some believers, Ezekiel's vision signifies the millennial reign of Christ, a time of restoration for Israel. It presents a hopeful and redemptive picture where divine promises are finally realized. Interestingly, certain Christian groups link the construction of the third temple with the arrival of the man of sin. This interpretation is drawn from a reading of 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4, where the temple is seen as a setting for significant events preceding Christ's return. Interpretation. This perspective has sparked debates over the role of the physical temple in eschatological events. Amidst the various interpretations, another viewpoint emerges, seeing Ezekiel's vision not as a reflection of a tangible structure, but as a glimpse into the heavenly temple. Here, it's believed that God's true dwelling place transcends earthly limitations and exists beyond mortal understanding. Paul's writings in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 6:19, 2 Corinthians 6:16, and Ephesians 2:21, contribute to this interpretation by likening the body to the temple of God. Interpreters see this as a profound metaphor, suggesting a spiritual connection between believers and the essence of God. This metaphor implies that the physical temple, once a central place of worship, is no longer necessary from a theological perspective. Instead, it emphasizes the spiritual connection between individuals and God, transcending physical structures. Messianic expectations. Rebuilding the temple. From the perspective of Messianic expectations, both Jewish and Christian groups anticipate the rebuilding of the temple in the future. This event is seen as part of the awaited Messianic era, during which the Messiah will rule and restore spiritual and earthly harmony. Within dispensationalism, there is an expectation for the future rebuilding of the temple, seen as the fulfillment of biblical prophecies. This belief often accompanies a literal interpretation of end-time events and emphasizes Israel's role in God's plan. Looking from an eschatological standpoint, akin to dispensationalists, the temple's reconstruction is closely linked to the end times and the final stages of human history. In Jewish tradition, the desire to witness the construction of the third temple on the revered Temple Mount holds a sacred place, reflecting the deep spiritual significance attached to this event. Throughout the diaspora, secular Orthodox Jews hold the aspiration of temple building dear. However, they do not necessarily believe that these individuals will actively participate in the physical rebuilding of the temple. Rather, to them, it represents a return to holy tradition and the restoration of the divine connection between God and his people. For some Jewish groups, this vision is not just a concept, but a fervent prayer deeply integrated into their thrice-daily Amidah prayer. The anticipation for the temple's reconstruction is palpable, intertwined with a profound longing for a physical place of worship. The significance and uncertainty surrounding this endeavor deeply resonate with those who hold this belief. Considering the truth that believers are regarded as the dwelling place of the Holy Spirit prompts reflection on the implications of this belief. Implications. The question arises, can we harmoniously coexist between the physical structure of the third temple and its spiritual significance? This raises considerations about the timing of the temple's construction and the preparations made for this endeavor. Since the inception of the temple movement in 1987, Jews have been diligently preparing for the eventual construction of the third temple. The Temple Institute, a leading force in these efforts, has meticulously crafted over 60 sacred temple vessels necessary for worship in the forthcoming rebuilt temple. Additionally, it houses 3 significant items for the future temple: the menorah, the incense altar, and the showbread table. These items, produced with strict adherence to biblical requirements, are showcased in the temple exhibition in Jerusalem. Furthermore, the Third Temple Academy has taken steps to train Kohanim, priests, and Levites for their sacred roles within the future temple. A field school has been established in Mizbiariko, providing a dedicated space for preparing individuals for these crucial responsibilities. Christians are also contributing to the temple's preparation. A group from Texas has provided 5 unblemished red heifers to the Temple Institute. These heifers meet the requirements outlined in Numbers 19:2-10 and symbolize the purification of the priests before they can offer sacrifices. Hindrances to rebuilding the third. Despite the fervent commitment of Orthodox Jews to rebuilding the temple, several hindrances persist. They believe that fulfilling biblical prophecies hinges on reconstructing the temple. Gershon Salomon, director of the Temple Mount Faithful, underscores the temple's significance in Israeli society, emphasizing its integral role in the lives of the Jewish people in their biblical homeland. Moreover, they anticipate that the rebuilding will address global issues and challenges the Jewish community faces. Jewish leaders in the temple movement emphasize the absence of the Shekinah, the divine presence, from the world. They believe this absence hinders the Jewish people from reaching their intended spiritual level. These leaders stress the connection between spiritual attainment and the temple's rebuilding. Rabbi Chaim Richman further underscores this spiritual significance. The director of the Temple Institute emphasizes that the restoration of the Shekinah, the divine presence, is dependent on the temple's rebuilding. According to him, the Jewish people cannot attain their desired spiritual status without it. However, there is a significant divide within the Jewish community regarding the idea of rebuilding the temple. Some oppose it, adopting a spiritualized perspective and maintaining a diaspora mentality. They accept the present political situation wherein Muslim control prevails over the Temple Mount. Historical context, status quo agreement. In 1967, after Israel occupied East Jerusalem, former Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Dayan established the status quo agreement. This agreement was later reaffirmed in a 4-way accord between Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and the United States in 2015. The status quo agreement is an informal agreement between Israel and the Islamic Waqf, religious trust, regarding the Temple Mount, Noble Sanctuary Compound administration in Jerusalem. It acknowledges the Waqf as the site's custodian and assigns security responsibilities to Israel. The status quo agreement, aimed at preserving fragile religious and political balances, prohibits Jews from praying or performing religious rituals on the Temple Mount compound. This has led to daily confrontations between Jews and Muslims, with the latter vigilantly monitoring Jewish presence. Although the agreement is informal and could potentially be adjusted, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has expressed reluctance to alter it. Despite lacking legal protection under Israeli law, he has pledged to uphold the agreement in the interest of peace. Surprisingly, rumors have circulated about a group of Australian Christians planning to initiate the second coming of Christ by setting fire to a pulpit in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Upon hearing this news, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, tasked with protecting the mosque, intensified its resistance against any perceived threats. In opposition to the construction of the Third Temple, Muslims have demanded exclusive rights to the Temple Mount and the transfer of Muslim sovereignty over it. While some Muslims deny the existence of former Jewish temples on the Temple Mount, there is a glimmer of hope for Jews. British archaeologist Robert Hamilton reportedly discovered the remains of a Jewish mikveh, a ritual pool used for purification, beneath the floor of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He suggests that this discovery dates back to the time of the Second Temple, indicating Jewish presence on the Mount. To address this long-standing problem, a young scholar proposed a solution in an influential journal of Jewish law. He suggests the establishment of an interfaith center at the Temple Mount. Rather than demolishing the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock to build the Third Temple, the temple could be rebuilt on the current or extended area within the Temple Mount. Regrettably, the proposal for an interfaith center was not embraced by both Muslims and Jews. However, had it been accepted, it could have facilitated meaningful conversations and interactions among different religious communities. Such a center would have promoted mutual understanding and reduced tensions by providing a space for individuals of diverse faiths to come together and worship alongside existing religious centers. It could have fostered a sense of unity and shared purpose, serving as a powerful symbol of hope and reconciliation. Since this suggestion was not considered, we remain uncertain about how long the antagonism against Jewish access to the site will persist. Nonetheless, interfaith cooperation continues to hold promise for promoting peace and understanding among diverse religious groups. So what do you think of the unexpected decision of Israel amidst the Third Temple construction? Comment below and subscribe for more such videos.